You know, on some podcasts, there's a level of production value where they use a soundproof room and have a microphone which costs more than a car and have all those muffle guards and stuff. I can afford that luxury, so there's a bus outside and the kettle's on. Let's do this. Oh, it's an evening podcast. We haven't done one of those in a very long time. You can even hear the bus reversing now. This is ridiculous. But at the same time, you know, it's evening and we're dealing with that. I haven't had a chance to record things because life has gone the way that life has gone, and there's nothing I can really do about that. I want to ask you a question, and I feel like, you know, in this day and age, it's I don't know, almost feels irrelevant because everyone seems to be doing it. When was your first act of defiance? You know, when you think about life, when you think about the life you've lived and the things you've done, when was your first act of defiance? When did you recognize that you stood there and said, you know what? No. It could have been to anyone. Could have been to, sorry, knocking the mic. It could have been to, you know, a teacher, a friend, a parent, an institution. When was your first act of defiance? I've been thinking a lot recently about core memories and what they mean and what you remember. I was chatting to some friends about The Lion King. The Lion King has nothing to do with my act of defiance, but I was chatting about The Lion King. And saying how those core memories, very vivid memory of The Lion King. I'll tell you a little story. So I would have been 4 or 5 years old when I first saw The Lion King. I saw The Lion King in the cinema. I am that old. I saw it on release. It was a friend's birthday. I believe that friend's name may have been William, may have been Kieran. No way in hell they're watching this, so screw it. We'll call him Weirin. Well, you can hear children outside now, ironically speaking. So went to see Lion King, and it was his birthday. We went to McDonald's. I'd never been to McDonald's because my family didn't go to McDonald's. We weren't that kind of family. We didn't really see it as a point of affording. But we went to McDonald's. This was back when McDonald's was like child orientated, trying to get you in with toys and stuff. And Weirin got himself a milkshake because he was allowed a milkshake, but he was the birthday boy, so he was allowed the milkshake. I think I had a burger or maybe some nuggets. I can't quite remember. It was okay. I don't really remember that much about it. I do remember that it was years and years and years and years later, maybe until I was in like my 18s, 20s, that I actually went back to McDonald's. I hadn't been to McDonald's in that period. I was a Burger King kid, teenager. I got into Burger King. Burger King I don't know, it still is, in my opinion, superior to McDonald's. I'm well off point. Either way. So we went to see The Lion King. And, of course, during the screening, there was about 4 of us and his mum. Mufasa dies. Sorry, spoilers. Mufasa dies. And I cried because I was 4 or 5 years old and just watched a father figure die on screen, and then a lion cub try to revive his dead father. So I cried, and his mum reached over and touched me on the arm and asked if I was okay, because I think she recognised that, oh shit, this was a big moment. This is a big moment. And that is a core memory. That is locked in to the old noggin. And I can remember it vividly down to the sights, the sounds, the smells, and all those kinds of things. I mean, I digressed earlier a little bit. I didn't really remember what I ate, but, you know, I remember being in McDonald's and the plastic white seats and the sounds and smells of those kinds of things, and the fact that I didn't get a milkshake. All of these things add up to be a core memory. And we were talking about core memories, and I was thinking to myself, whilst looking at the news and looking at everything else around the world, thinking, when was my first act of defiance? Because, I mean, I don't think I come across as a disagreeable person. I don't even think I come across as a particularly rebellious person in any way, shape, or form. I think if people meet me or see me, they just assume that I'm going along with the status quo. I think that's what I don't know. I may be wrong, but that's what I assume. I assume that I'm looking at the world out there and going, okay, well, I have my little job, and I go do my job, and I have an apartment to live in, even though I'm still dealing with various unwanted visitors within my apartment. But I have that, and I get paid, and I pay taxes and all these things, and I'm very agreeable with various parts of society. I don't think people look at me and see me as a rebellious person. I don't know if I want them to. I like being somewhat innocuous. I don't know. But at the same time, I do like to push against the grain. I do act as a little bit of a pick at the scab, and a little bit of a, push against the norm of whatever is the norm at the time. And I've been on situations with friends where we've seen things and done things, and they've said to me, "Graham, don't do it. Just don't do it. Don't get involved in whatever that is. That's I remember going for a hike. I went for a hike with a couple of friends, and there was a sign which just said, "Don't climb this hill." And they turned to me and said, "Don't do it, Graham." But I wanted to climb the hill. And I'm not even that kind of person, right? I'm not. When I'm faced with figures, I'm not. I don't instantly think, "All right, gotta go in there." No trespassing signs don't do anything for me. I'm not looking at them going, "Okay, well, I clearly want to go in there. Grab the bolt cutters, away we go." No. I see them and I'm like, okay, no trespassing. Now, if I see a gate surrounding a country house where they've blocked off a, public walkway, and it says, "Oh, this is private property," that's when, and I know that. I mean, we've discussed this before. I don't have a problem with authority. I have a problem with abuse of power and privilege and all those kinds of things. That's when it brings out the defiant streak in me. But I was trying to think of when my first defiances were. And there was a couple of stories which came to mind, I guess. So my first one, which I remember, was again as a child. We're getting a lot of stories in this episode. Again, as a child, I'd been sent to the shops on the edge of the state, and been told to get milk, given a $5, and I went and bought milk. And I also bought myself a little treat, because it was something I wanted. And I didn't really think about it. I just kind of did it. And then when I got home, my mom asked me where her change was from, being at the store and buying milk. And I said, "I haven't gotten it because I got this." And there was this look of disappointment across her face. And I think I may have even been told that I wasn't allowed it, or it was a waste of money. But I did it anyway, because I wanted it. I'd been given this abundance of wealth, and usually it was no problem if I got some penny sweets or something. And that was the unfold. That was the unfold of the story, and that was an act of defiance against my mum. The weird thing with that story is that I did that, and then I couldn't enjoy the toy I'd bought. The toy I'd bought was one of those birds which you bounce on your finger, and it bounces and comes with a little thing and it bounces. And I never put it out, and I never played with it, because I felt so guilty and so bad about it. And it wasn't so much the fact that I'd done it, it was the money aspect of it. And money became a big thing within our family, and still is a big thing within our family. It's a whole conversation to have, and I could probably do a whole episode about how I feel about money, but it became this thing, and I didn't feel like I could put it out, and I ended up just donating it or giving it away, because I genuinely couldn't look at it. Even now, I get a little knot just in my stomach when I think about that situation and how it was handled and all those little things, and I don't know if I ever apologised for it. So I'm sorry. I am sorry for that. But it was an act of defiance. I remember other acts of defiance. I was in school, and we were doing, we were colouring. It was a weird little, now that I think about it, it was a weird little activity we were doing, and I must have been year 2, something like that. Not very old at all. I don't know how old you are in year 2, but maybe 6, 7. We were doing this thing where you take a picture, you take multiple pictures, and then it's the same picture multiple times, and then you cut them out, and you put padded foam between each picture, kind of like decoupage, and you stack them up to make it into a 3D object. That's what we were doing. And I'd been given a rugby ball to colour in. The idea being we were going to cut it out, and then we were going to stack them up and, be done with it. And we were being told to colour, so I did. I coloured. And then we were told we had to hurry up. You had to hurry up. You can't take that long, because we haven't got that long to do lessons. You got to hurry up. And I didn't want to hurry up. I wanted to take my time with it, and I also get bored when I colour. It's still the same now, I get bored when I colour. And I didn't appreciate it, so I decided in my infinite knowledge, we were going to cut them out anyway, to just scribble. So I did. I just scribbled, and I scribbled, quickly across this sheet of paper with the rugby ball on it, and the colours went everywhere around the outside, over the lines, and all that kind of stuff. It was coloured in. And my teacher came to me and was like, Graham, why are you colouring outside the lines? You're not meant to colour outside the lines. And I remember just thinking, but we're going to cut it out. It doesn't matter if I colour outside the lines. We're going to cut this out. There's a second part to this task. We're going to cut this out. And I remember being told off for it. And I remember thinking, this is ridiculous, because we're going to cut it out. And again, there was this satisfaction to this whole situation. And I think there was a better one, because I don't feel bad about that. I still feel pretty confident about that. That was I was foreseeing what was going to happen, so I was taking a quicker approach, taking a more logical approach, taking an approach which I could be more comfortable with. Now, why do I bring this up? Why do I bring up these little acts of defiance? I have another one, but we'll get to that in a minute. I think it's because now we live in an age where social media is so big, right? Social media is huge, and I find a lot online. Obviously, there's a lot of protest online, and there's a lot of petitioning online, and there's a lot of getting involved with movements, which is great. It is all great. It is bringing visibility to a lot of things which didn't have it before. Even like today. Today I saw a post which I think is from SAG after the strike is over. They've come to a basic agreement about their rights and their workers' rights, so they're going back to work. That is great. The only way that happened was because of social media. If that hadn't happened before, you wouldn't have seen it. Right? If this had happened in the 80s and 90s, you would not have seen it. It would have been one news story, and then that would have been it, because the news stations are owned by media conglomerates, and that's the reality of it. But I saw that, and people got involved, and people showed their support, and people put their money where their mouth is, and they stopped supporting some things, and they boycotted other things, and all of that kind of stuff came together, and that's great. It's one of these things, and there's all these things which are going on in Palestine and Gaza, and we had the whole situation with BLM, and all of these movements are getting so much exposure, which is great. But there's this other side to it. This is a side where people now can end up being more performative than they are actually engaging with things. There's a line I like, which is, we live in a society where straight teeth in your mouth are more important than the words that come out of them. And I think it's relevant here, but from kind of a different standpoint, that people are so interested in being seen to be for or against something that they don't really engage with the subject they're engaging with. And you see this a lot with places which were like Twitter, before Twitter, fell off a cliff, is the amount of retweets, the amount of unthought out signing things, the amount of supporting someone instantly when you see something without doing the extra reading, without, involving themselves in other parts of demonstration and other parts of defiance. And I think it's not that stuff is bad per se. It's just it's very interesting to watch it evolve, especially when more information comes out later on. And I think it's something as society we definitely need to take notice of. It's like the two stories I have. I have these two stories, and one of them I feel bad about, and one of them I don't feel bad about. And it's because the first story has all this extra information with it, has all these things which then evolved from my act of defiance, which made me feel bad about the situation. And the other one doesn't. The other one has me and an authority figure and me being right. And I think we may see that with a lot of things online. We may see that with more and more focus on protest, because, again, protest is great. I believe in protest. I believe in strike action. I believe the laws which have come in to limit these things are ridiculous and draconian and designed only to benefit large financial stakeholders. But I also recognize that products and companies are going to exploit this kind of thing. And this is something which I think should be taken into account. I think you should think of how you defy things, how you look at things as a person. I've said this before in the episode, I can't remember what it is called, but something like quietly boycotting or something like that, where you should think about how you engage with things, how you look at the world, because the chances are there's going to be some company somewhere which is just going to utilize the momentum and the movement to try and push their product, to try and push their aspect of things, to get you on their platform. Like now, it's, support this petition, right? Support this petition, share this thing, share this item, share this view, share this idea, and get your friends to sign up. Give me your email address. Give me your email address, and we'll share it for you. All these things, and it's monopolizing off grief. It's monopolizing off pain. It's monopolizing off, people's want to be involved and want to be active and try to stem the violence and the pain and the suffering of the world, but ignoring what they may be giving up in order to do it. Ignoring what they may have to give away to be able to show they're involved. I think when you track back through your life and your brain and you think of those memories, you have to recognize the ones which didn't go how you thought they would go, and reapply that over and over again. I think you have to look at the wider situations and consider what your actions will be. Right? For instance, right now, there's a lot of things going on, and obviously a lot of petitions going around, a lot of walkouts going around. These are all great. I have basically stopped writing to my politicians within the UK because it was ineffective. It was ineffective, and some of the messaging which was there was unclear to a point where I felt I was putting myself in a position where this just seemed a bit redundant. Sometimes I'll message, but not for everything, because if it's done for everything, it lacks the impact, right? And the same with petitions. Petitions will go here, there, and everywhere, but I read a lot of information about how petitions are handled by the government, at least within the UK, and decided that only certain ones would be worth signing, because I can be more effective not signing this petition to do with X, Y, and Z, but instead donating some money. And it's looking at it from those points of view, looking at it from a viewpoint of it's never one size fits all, right? And that's the truth of any situation, of any act of defiance. It's never one size fits all. It's never standing up and punching someone will solve the situation, because not all situations require that. Throwing money at a problem won't solve the situation, because not all situations require that. Anger, violence, walking out, this won't always solve the situation. And I'm not saying I have the answers to everything either. I just think it's something that we as a group of people should always be aware of and should always be looking at and readjusting. This is what I find interesting as well, kind of seeing anything defiant online, is watching the inventiveness of people. Watching people consider this. Watching communities and society deal with how to be most effective and how to adjust their techniques and get the message across is incredibly important. And I don't really know if I had a point to make today. But I've just been thinking about that first act of defiance and how that went down. Because that first story I told, it comes with the classic line of, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. Which we've all heard at some point, right? We've all had it from an authority figure. I'm not mad at you, I'm just disappointed in you. I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. We've all had it. And yet, I have another story. I have a story from when I was older, teenage, 15, 16, maybe 14. And I was in the school band. I played clarinet. Oh, I was in the training band, I should say. I never went up to the full band because I left the classical, what's the word? Groupage. At some time before I got to the big band. I was never quite good enough for the big band. Wasn't quite there. I wasn't the music student they wanted me to be. Anyway, so there was a band practice, and it was around the time I was losing interest in it. I was mainly losing interest in it because of the rampant want for practicing, and also because of the push to go for grades and have to play certain kinds of music to go for these grades, and I never really interested in me. I was more interested in just learning the instrument. But I decided to skip practice. So I told my friend, George, that I had a dentist appointment, so I wouldn't be going to practice, so he could tell a teacher. So I lied to a friend, and I went home. And I told my mom that practice was cancelled. It's foolproof, isn't it? You have these two things, two lies, completely fine. However, George then proceeded to take hours to go home after practice, which then got his mom worried, which then caused her to ring my mum, which then revealed that George had taken 2 hours to get home because he'd been talking to some friends on the walk home and dawdled on his way home. Mum had left the house and gone to find George, to look for George with his mum, to calm her down. Came back, and all the lies had fallen apart. And she once again said, I'm not angry, Graham. I'm just disappointed. And yet, I didn't feel bad about it. I felt more annoyed. I felt annoyed that I'd been caught. I'd been caught in this lie. And it's because in reality, I tried to use someone else for my own means. I tried to exploit George. I tried to get my way by doing something that I shouldn't, when in reality all I had to do was just be honest and say, you know what, I'm maybe not, I don't want to do this anymore. Maybe I don't want to be in this training band anymore. And again, it's just an early act of defiance. I changed my technique from the first few times I'd done it. And it didn't work. And then I didn't do that again. Other acts of defiance I took on to myself. I took on as, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be the one who gets affected. And it's going to be on me. No one else is going to have to explain my actions. And I think when we look at society, the world at large, and the things going on in it, that's what we have to do. We have to think, how can we help improve that situation without detracting from that situation? How can we engage with everything else going on out there without making ourselves the focal point to the wider world? As I say, this is another wandering thought of a podcast, but I'd be curious when your first acts of defiance were and how they went. Because I see children all the time defying their parents. I live in an area near a school. Kids don't want to do what they're told. Teenagers don't want to do what they're told. The world is never comfortable with being directed with what they're told. So I'm curious what yours are and how you feel about them now. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.